If we can get everybody on in the room and in some chairs, we'll move to the last session of this workshop. This one is on new approaches for optimizing sustainable solutions and ecosystem services for human health. And I will tell you that I'm not masquerading as Frank Loy. I'm not Lynn Goldman. I'm not Jack Spengler. We've had fill-ins for all of these. I'm just me. I'm Panel4 Sandifer, and delighted to be here. I want to give just a couple of remarks, of not necessarily to frame this session, but to provide you a little bit of background of what might be available to us to move forward. And that is the fact that we do, in fact, now have a national ocean policy. It's been a long time coming, recommended by the National Ocean Commission in 2004, finally done by executive order of the President in 2010. And a couple of important things about this policy is it really looks at a broader range of ocean activities and all of the federal agencies that touch the oceans in one way or another, and organizes us into an activity that is specifically focused on the treasuring the ecosystems and making sure that while we use things, we don't use them up. And so part of this is the creation of a National Ocean Council that has 27 federal agencies represented on it, so it's not just the usual suspects of ocean environmental agencies, but a lot of others. It has an advisory body, the Governance Coordinating Committee, made up of state, tribal, and local government representatives to ensure that we pay attention to where things actually happen, that is in the local communities, and a research advisory panel. And I run very quickly through these. 4 priority objectives. Note that the President talks about using an ecosystem context. That's a really fundamental underpinning for this whole thing and for the way we do business and what we've been talking about in this workshop, thinking about the services provided by ecosystems and how they inform or impact human health. 5 areas of special emphasis in here: the resiliency, adaptation to climate change, ecosystem protection, restoration, water quality and sustainable practices on land. That is the connections there. That's a big deal. A lot of the areas we talked about yesterday. The Arctic, and observations and infrastructure to enable scientifically based decision making. And I simply wanted to use a couple of examples from one of these things, coastal and marine spatial planning, because the language in the executive order specifically talks about improving ecosystem health, maintaining ecosystem services, and including biological diversity, and including ecosystem services in these geospatial planning activities. And the last thing I wanted to do is just show you that in the President's remarks about this, he specifically included human health and well-being as part of what he expected to be the focus of this national ocean policy. Humans are part of the ecosystems, and we have to pay attention to the health and well-being, which is right here in his statement. So with that, I wanted to introduce this session and say that there is a policy construct in which we can begin to work, at least at the federal level, and with regional, state, and other partnerships, and I think it will provide ability to, I hope, pick up some of the things that our speakers are now going to talk about and move them into action. And let me introduce our 2 speakers. We are very pleased to have Dr. Steve Murawski. Steve has just joined us this morning after coming, despite having to deal with a death in the family and all of the associated emotional and travel turmoil there, to come be with us. Steve is a former colleague, a recovering NOAA addict, who has moved into the academic sector a couple of years ago, professor and the Downtown Progress Peter Betzer Endowed Chair of Biological Oceanography at the University of South Florida. He's developed approaches for understanding the impacts of fishing on marine fish complexes exploited in mixed species aggregations. He's also a U.S. delegate to and currently Vice President of the International Council for the Exploration of the Sea, a 20-nation organization dedicated to understanding of ocean ecosystems. So we'll have Steve first, and then he'll be followed by Dr. David Tillman, a member of the Roundtable, and Regent Professor and McKnight Presidential Chair in Ecology at the University of Minnesota, as well as instructor in conservation biology, ecology, evolution and behavior, and microbial ecology. He does it all. He's director of the Cedar Creek Ecosystem Science Reserve Long-Term Ecological Research Station, and for the last decade, much of his work is focused on the environmental impacts of global agriculture and how global food demand could be met in more sustainable ways. And as we talked last evening, or rather this morning, he and my boss, Dr. Jane Lipchenko, were in graduate school together, so another connection to NOAA. So with that, Steve, you're up.